Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the Australia's Tabletop Wargaming Network as per usual. Once again, I am Scotty D, and tonight I'm joined by Jack, one of our fellow network members. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, pretty good. We spent 14 hours driving to Adelaide over 2 days, so I'm knackered, but always glad to be here.
I've got that drive ahead of me in the next 2 days, so that's going to be fun. And we've got the head TO for Uprising Adelaide joining us tonight, Adam Napier. How are you going, mate?
Ready to sweat tomorrow at 42 degrees, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah, yes. So tonight we have got the Uprising Adelaide tournament preview, and we are tying in what we normally do is our South Pacific ITC snapshots as well. We're kind of tying the two together because Uprising Adelaide is the South Pacific ITC Championship event, which is absolutely awesome. We're going to be talking about the tournament, talking about the rankings and such heading into it, and a whole bunch of stuff to do with it as well. So it's great to have everyone joining us in chat. If you are watching us live on Twitch when we are doing this, or if you're catching us the day before Uprising, this will be going up on YouTube as well. So really great to have you joining us as per usual, ladies and gentlemen. So as we jump into the preview, Adam, why don't you give us a bit of a brief introduction about yourself, a quick background for how long you've been in the hobby, what armies you play, other things you do in the community and such as well.
Yeah, so I'm sure probably a lot of listeners have probably heard this before, but I'll go through it. So I've been playing 40k since I was 13, so going on 24 years now. Competitively, I've been in and around the hobby since about 2010, 2011. So marking 14 years-ish this year. And I will play anything that's good. I am a meta chaser, world-renowned meta chaser, and that means I was definitely playing Elder at the beginning of this edition, so I am one of those people. So.
Yeah, nice. Well, I mean, it's as we've just had LVO finish this afternoon, I, for one, welcome our new Necron Overlords. Over to Ari, but we will see what
we have figured out in one fell swoop. We figured out in one fell swoop the answer to the Eldar tactics is just hoping they don't screen the monolith. If that happens,
or just monolith, right? Just monolith.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a great game to watch, and definitely, if you're able to watch it on War Games Live, definitely check that out as well. All right, so before we jump into any other major details, Adam, why don't you give us a bit of a rundown on the history of Uprising, how long it's been running, when you started it, what the main focus of the tournament is, and the core values that you've got behind the event.
So I think we're far enough removed that I can tell the real story of the birth of Uprising, I think.
Yes.
So Uprising was born of a passionate hatred for CanCon. Sweating in a shed with terrible terrain while it rained outside and was 42 degrees and the state was burning all around us in 2018 or whatever, 2019, whatever year it was. We stood there, and at the end of it, we're like, this tournament is garbage. This can't be Australia's best tournament. No shade on the TOs. They did the best with what they had. But the way that the event was run was just unmanageable, with terrain having to be sourced from all over the country, which led to I played on several tables which literally had 4 pieces of terrain, which were a 3-inch high piece of L wood that was just painted grey. It was terrible, and it just didn't work for Australia's premier event. So when we got back from that LVO, it was right at the beginning of COVID. We'd been watching some stuff on COVID on TV and laughing about how it looked like a zombie apocalypse. Little did we know what was to come. But we got back from that and we were like, you know what, at some point in the near future, we need to try and make Australia's tournament scene better and have a better big event than what's on offer at the moment. So we had no intention of launching it in 2020. However, events perspired and CanCon wasn't happening in 2020, and we decided that if we were going to tackle the biggest event in Australia, that was the time to do it while it wasn't running. So in the midst of COVID, we ran the first Uprising. A few states were still locked out. I think Victoria was able to attend, Queensland was able to attend, New South Wales got locked out at the last minute, I think. So We had a few issues there. But the first year it ran, we ran with, what was it? Would have been just under 100 people. Second year, we bumped it up to 140. Third year, which was last year, we went up to 220. And this year, we were hoping to push up to 300, but a few different things have perspired, and 10th edition coming out, and it wasn't great. Certainly hurt a bit of tournament attendance in the beginning. But we're really excited to be rolling dice with 210 players. So still by far and away the biggest event in Australia by a long way. So really happy with it. And we just aim to deliver a better experience. So we have things like table service. We have food trucks available at the venue. There's a pub across the road. We're licensed to sell alcohol. This year we've got frozen daiquiris available if it's not going to be that warm, but frozen daiquiris are still going to be available. So we just aim to deliver a better experience than just rocking up to a table with 4 pieces of grey painted El Ruin on it in each corner. So
yeah, 100%.
And I'll chip in here quickly. Last year I attended Uprising for the first time, and I believe I was talking to you, and I went, "I'm curious to see if this is better than CanCon." Yeah, you blew every expectation out of the water. Like, I would highly suggest. I have really fond memories of CanCon because it was my first big tournaments. But everything that you remember from those big old tournaments, if you're ever on the fence, because it is a big commitment to get to Adelaide. This commitment, nothing to do.
Yeah. Even myself previously having run CanCon, Adam, as you know, way back. It's even when I ran at 80 players, it was the biggest CanCon we'd had in the past 3 years. And that was still terrain wasn't the greatest. We made the best of everything. We had to ask people to bring down mats, ask people to bring down terrain, and had a great TO team, and we did the best of what we could. It was also the same weekend as LVO, so we had BCP issues because it was the first year of BCP being a thing too. So
yeah, I distinctly remember that one. I played one of the tables I played on. I called it Planet Bowling Ball because it quite literally had the foam balls with the toothpicks in it, like the old GW from the White Dwarfs. So as I said, no shade at the TOs at all. You did what you could with the best you could, and it's such a hard thing. Even now, 3-4 years into this, the infrastructure investment is just insane. Every year we're oh, we'll finally be in the green. We'll finally be in the green. We won't be going into the event owing thousands of dollars. Even this year, when we didn't have to actually build any new terrain, still thousands of dollars in the hole. Buying and cutting that much acrylic to cover all of these tables with the clear acrylic has been a monumental job. I feel bad for my neighbours because all they've been smelling for the last 2.5 months is cutting acrylic on the lasers.
Oh, gosh. Oh, man. That would be, that's going to be... It's, we saw at LVO, they use acrylic across all of their tables as well, so it seems to be the standard for the high-level tournaments as well. But, it's, it is what it is, unfortunately, with the new edition. And just trying to navigate it.
That was something we were pretty adamant on, regardless of how we were going to adapt. We also had the issue of first floor line of sight blocking. None of our stuff did that, so we had to sit down and make the decision. We're do we just say everything's first floor line of sight blocking? And last edition we had been adamant that we hated the idea of abstract terrain, so we went through and we cut pieces of black MDF to seal up every single window on every single piece of terrain, and have sat down and glued it into 888 pieces of terrain. So it's a lot.
Yeah, and the number of corn as well.
Yeah, yes, exactly right.
The amount of pain that would have come from that. Gee. All right. So, as you've already mentioned, we got 210 players in attendance. We're going to actually jump in to having a look at a little bit of, we're going to look at the players pack. We're going to talk about the missions, talk about terrain and such as well. So I'm just going to get some stuff up on screen for everybody as well. If this decides it wants to actually connect to the right damn window. There we go.
While,
All right. You go ahead, Jack.
I was about to say, while you're just getting all that prepped, I suppose from my perspective as someone who's coming here to play this year, one of the most interesting decisions was using the GW layout format on that choice. And obviously there was a bit of talk about
Scotty, is he cutting out for you too? Or?
Yeah, he's stuttering a bit.
Yeah, I'm having it. I think you're asking
Curious.
about why we're using the GW layouts, Jack. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like he's just
Yeah. So I definitely agree.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, cool. So he's asking about GW layouts.
Yeah, so
sorry.
The decision to use the GW layouts.
Adelaide Wi-Fi is not.
Yeah, no, understand, mate. I have had the same issue over the last couple of weeks, so I get it. The decision to make the GW layouts the standard for us was purely, I don't use the word laziness, but out of convenience. They already had the layouts there, they had the packs there, so we can just adapt as best we can to it. Like our terrain, where GW might have a 6x12, some of ours are 7x12, some of ours are 8x12, just to fit our terrain onto it. But the layouts themselves remain relatively the same, and it just makes our life a little bit easier, because especially after last year, we had the issues with the terrain layouts on day one where we hadn't thought it through well enough for all the different deployments. So making sure that was going to be up to scratch this year was a big thing, and it's still an ongoing thing for us. So there's still going to be a lot of work to do on setup day to make sure that those terrain maps and maps are going to match as best as possible. So
yeah. So we've just had a bit of a jump around on the layouts, ladies and gentlemen. So you'll see me and Jack have swapped. So we'll just keep that going forward. But where were we? We're talking about tournaments. So it's up in Highbury, which is kind of northeast of Adelaide.
Correct. We moved there last year. Space-wise is the issue. Finding somewhere that has 800 plus square meters and isn't going to charge you $30,000 a day has been the issue for us as far as growth goes. And this location, a little bit further out of the city, opposite side to the airport, there's certainly things that are not great about it. But the fact that we can actually fit the number of people we want to have in there is really important. So,
yeah, for sure. And it also gives you room to expand. So, you've only got the 210 this year. Later down the line, you hit that 300 and you're like, right, okay, is there capacity to maybe go to 350 or 360 in the future years
we had some layout designs that comfortably would fit like 320 and that 340. So that was where we were looking. Looking at the LVO layout, if we were to go as bad, I'm going to say as bad as LVO, like the table layout there with the 6 tables side to side is less than ideal. But if we were to do that, we could fit 550 players in the same space.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just, I don't think we would ever do that. So
yeah.
I for one, as someone who intends to play 8 games there, enjoy the fact that I can move around a table without having to interact with 5 other tables.
Yeah, exactly right. Like, I heard that there were legitimately people crawling under the table in LVO. So.
Yeah. Not surprising at all. So, as we've mentioned, 8 rounds across the 3 days, and you've opted for 2 hours. Let me have a look here at the players pack. So you got 3 hours, 10 minutes, but that's an additional 10 minutes at the start of round 1 for day 1 for battle ready.
Correct. Yeah.
But every round is 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. We prefer to play 3 hours here. Whenever we go to a 2:45 event, we end up like practicing on the clock for a week and a half just to get that 15 minutes down pat, because the 3 hours is the standard that we play over here. So just allows a little bit more time for everyone. So
awesome, which is great. And then one thing that does set Uprising out a little bit is, of course, being the championship event, you've got a top cut. For those who don't know what a top cut is, do you want to just kind of explain the concept and just walk through how you guys are going to be handling it?
Yeah, so we've done it a couple of different ways over the years. It's been a bit tricky finding the ideal way. Last year and the years before, we did like pods. We potted the whole thing after round 6. So if you were 59th, there was no way that you could finish better than 56th after round 6. So you were kind of locked in your bracket of 4. This year, we've decided just to do the top cut, but we're doing the top cut a little bit differently than, say, like an LVO would as well. We want everyone to keep playing. We don't want to have to say no to everyone like for day 3. So what we're doing is, after round 5 this year, we're cutting to the top 8. Which should end up between 6 and 7 undefeated players, and then one person or 2 people potentially on 4-0 draw or 5-0, 4-0 draw or 4-0 loss. Will be able to sneak into that top 8. But basically, the way it'll work from there for those players, everyone else will just continue to play Swiss throughout the rest of the event. So that won't change for them. But as far as those top 8 players go, what will happen is 1 will be paired into 8, 2 will be paired into 7, 3 will be paired into 5. So typical bracketed system. The losers of those rounds will then just drop back into the main pool. And that will continue to happen until we get to the final 2. So final 2 in the last round are guaranteed first and second. All of the other 6 people who made it into the top pod that have now lost are back in the pool, and they're playing for at best 3rd. So they can still have the opportunity to get 3rd, whereas if you go into that top 8 and you lose that first round, the best you could normally do is 5th. So the way we're doing it is everyone just drops back into the pool and everyone can fight it out for scrapping it out for 3rd. So it allows us to top cut to the 1-2 and kind of lock that winner bracket at 8. But it also allows us to have a 3rd where it's actually playing for, because if we cut it there and said after round 5 that the person who was 9th, the best you can do is finish 9th, it's probably not the ideal scenario. So we decided that them dropping back down was probably the easiest way to do it. Allows everyone to have a good fight for 3rd, and 3rd at a 200-plus person tournament is still a big achievement. So
yeah, 100%. Like it requires, even just to make the top cut, it requires you to make sure that you're scoring as high as you possibly can out of all your games, because even if you play a game and you play like a 60, you get a 60-point win, right? That might lower you, and so you might have to play against someone who's gotten consistently 80 plus, and it's a tougher game for you going into the top cut. So that's it incentivizes players to play as hard as possible. To get as many points as possible, not playing as hard as possible, but that's kind of what I meant was, going out, getting as many points as they can possibly achieve so that they can try and secure themselves a good spot if they do get into that top bracket.
Yeah, exactly right.
And another quick thing to interject as well is, even from like the lower bracket perspective, I really like that the 4-player pods was a really good idea, but it did always feel very disparaging on like day 3. So I really like the introduction of everything is still live. Like every game you have the possibility of going into anything, especially from a practice perspective. Newer players don't feel like they have to go and research the 3 players in their pod. They can kind of do whatever they want. Like you can still play anything. It leads to a lot more unique creativity and a lot more to play for, even in those final scrapping rounds.
Yeah, and another big point of feedback we had was in those pods, like if you're in the 60 to 70 pod, really far down, and there was a decent chance that you get paired into someone that you'd already played, and that's not the ideal scenario when you're literally fighting for 58th or 57th. So it was a piece of feedback that we'd taken on from just the average player as well. Top cut's still there for the big guys, the big dogs who think they can win, but everyone else can just play their event and make sure they get 8 games against 8 different players. So,
yeah, for sure.
100%.
we'll let Adam jump off for 2 seconds. He'll be back with us. So whilst he is doing so, we're going to jump a little bit ahead. We're going to talk about the ITC rankings as the South Pacific ITC snapshot for the 22nd of January. So this is going to be a bit more of an abridged version. As I've mentioned, we're only going to be looking at the top 10 players, the top 5 teams, and the top player from the notable factions. So, top 10 players. Majority of these guys are actually in attendance. There are a couple that I believe are not. So, I'll mention them when I get to them. So, in first place, you've got Brody Middleton sitting on 1,219 points. All of these guys have got 6 out of 6 events, so I'm not going to repeat that for all 10. Then in second place, nipping at his heels, you've got Alex and Glezos, Alex the Greek, with 1,189 points. Third place, who is not playing this year, is Mr. Matt Morrisoli. He did go 5-1 at LVO over the weekend. He's sitting on 1,178 points. And Alex is also from Art of War, same as Matt Morrisoli too. You then got Josh Brody, who is in fourth place, sitting on 1,156 points. In fifth place is Adam, who we are chatting to at the moment, who isn't playing in the tournament, of course, but sitting on 1,137 points. Then we got Dylan Cowan from Victoria, sitting on 1,131 points. Jordan McGregor in seventh place with 1,102. In eighth place is Michael Wood from either Victoria or South Australia. I can never get this right for Michael. So
he's from South Australia.
He's South Australian. All right, good to know for the future. Thanks for that, Adam. Sitting on 1,098 points. Then you've got Will Wyckoff from New South Wales sitting on 1,094, and then Kyle Pearson coming in at 10th with 1,093. So really, the top 7, if they do well, they're in a shot to knock Brody off.
So I've actually done a bit of number crunching on the side on this particular one. Shout out to the Chadmac boys who I've been doing the number crunching with, or rather they've been giving me numbers. The top 3 is really contentious. But as you said, if 1 and 2 bomb out, there is a possibility for anything. So obviously one of the important things about Uprising and why I really like where it's positioned is it is the biggest event in Australia you can attend. So it's got the most ITC points on the line. This is where you see most of the major shuffles.
Yeah.
If any of those top 10 do exceedingly well, and if you see bombing out from the others, that's when you'll start to see a bit of a shift. But jumping 100 points on a lot of these guys, it's really important to note, if you're ever looking at ITC stuff, always look at what everyone's lowest scored event is, because they're the points that they're trying to improve. So you're not just going to walk into Uprising and score 180 points. If your lowest score is 160, you're only gaining 20 points.
Yeah.
So for anyone doing the maths out there, have a look at that. That's often your big numbers. Also, I am going to interject. New South Wales for ATC this year looks real good based on these positions. So shout out to my home state. Love you all to bits. It's going to be a good year.
Yeah. It's it's crazy, to not have Matt playing, I think is huge. I think that definitely opens up things quite a lot. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see where it all pans out. We'll go through the teams. So then you got the top 5 teams, all are 10 out of 10 events. If you don't know how teams function, effectively a player can only contribute 3 scores to their team to kind of spread out the scores, rather than a single player going and playing 8 and coming first and then carrying the rest of the team, basically. They changed it a number of years ago. In first place, you've got Chad Mech sitting on 2,080 points. In second place, you've got the Power Stances, which is at 1,901 points. Third place, you've got the Normal Blokes at flat 1,900. In fourth place, you've got Northside Alliance sitting on 1,815. And in fifth place, you've got the Comrades sitting on 1,811 points. So actually quite a nice spread there in terms of the different states coming into play there. Chadmac's mainly New South Wales. The Power Stances, I believe, are South Australian, Adam?
That's my team, yep.
Yep. The Normal Blokes and Northside Alliance are Queensland, and then Comrades, I believe, are also South Australia from memory too. Could be wrong.
I don't think there are.
Or Victorian, one of those two. But yeah, between normal blokes and we got Palitech in chat just saying between power stances and normal blokes, there is 0.19 points between the two, which is...
Yeah, well, there's no normal blokes, and there's like 3 or maybe 2 power stances playing because most of us are running the event. So
yeah, and another important note quickly is when you're listing off the top 10 of the ITC, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know first and second are definitely Chadmech.
Mm-hmm.
I know Will Wykov is a part of Chadmech.
Yep.
Like Chadmech is like dominating the top 10 to begin with.
Yes. Yeah, I think Jordan McGregor might also be a part of Chadmech.
He is also a part of Chadmech, yeah.
Yeah. So they got 4 players up there that would be all contributing as their highest scores to that to get to the 2,080 points, which is massive. So yeah, I would say they've got first place relatively secured at this point, and now it's just, fighting for second and the rest. We might even see some of the 6 to 10 teams might jump up into maybe third potentially without the normal blokes or some of the Northside Alliance players being in there. Comrades potentially having a good chance to get at least 4th, depending on how their players go, maybe even 3rd. So it'll be really interesting to see.
I remember seeing a few Comrades team names in there. So
all right, so then we'll jump into the faction rankings. And these are, I just went through the players who are playing in the top 10 and then down the list of factions that they're playing. These aren't in alphabetical order. And once I'd done this, I then found on Best Coast Pairings that they've actually got a faction page now. So I've been doing it that way all year, and now I found the faction page. So the fun. All right, so for Eldari in first place, this has changed as of Exterminatus that happened 2 weeks ago. Dale Mann is in first place on 684 points. He is also in attendance at Uprising. For Tyranids, you've got Alex Inglezos sitting on 734 points. No one's been able to pip him yet, but Uprising might be the chance with some of the Tyranid players to potentially get him, because he is not playing Tyranids.
Sorry, just before we run through this, I'll just clarify something. So this year with LVO being before Uprising, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So whatever this is currently sitting at is what it's locked at. This is not going to change.
Okay.
We're unable to submit any results for faction stuff, and we're not even handing out trophies for faction this year because of the fact that it was just a bit of a kerfuffle with the date moving to before Uprising. So
yeah. Because that was something I did, like I asked Kicker months ago. I asked the BCP guys, and I heard nothing on it because I was like, this is going to be a problem. Like, if we're running the ITC South Pacific Champs the weekend after LVO... It's
not just you that you heard nothing for. I had to chase and chase and chase. Mate. It was
Hang on. I was about to say, this is very interesting news to me as well.
Yeah, look, we were hoping to be able to work something out for it, but as is, just getting the actual ITC winner is proving challenging, where we literally are having to get BCP are building us a spreadsheet script for us to be able to pull the data to actually make it work, because we weren't able to get any way to submit it after the date on the physical website. So we've got like a special spreadsheet that was built by BCP that is going to calculate everything for us at the end as far as the winner of the ITC goes. So
I was about to say, counter idea. What we do is get a random number generator from 1 to whoever's submitted a result and just roll it like live on camera.
We are doing, so in lieu of doing best ITC faction, we're doing best in faction for the event itself. Was handing out some trophies and things like that, because we didn't want to completely take it away, because we know that people do still care. But at the same time, we had to be realistic in what our capabilities of manually calculating things were at the end of the event. We can't have everyone sitting there for 3 hours while we manually work everything out. So
100% agree. 100% agree. And as someone who is worked in data analytics the past 3 years, I can tell you sometimes when you work with large data sets like that, it is a nightmare to do in a quick manner. So we might just pass on from the faction rankings then to talking about something else that has come up in the past week that I'd love to get all three of us here our thoughts on just briefly. Games Workshop taking over the ITC rankings. They dropped this in person at LVO. It got thrown up on Reddit, and then probably about half an hour later, the official community post went up. However, there's been no kind of official like social media post about it from Games Workshop. I had a look like the day after they made that announcement. Nothing on Facebook, nothing on Instagram, none of it. So I'll start with Jack. What are your thoughts?
So I'm very mixed about this. I like the fact initially that Games Workshop are finally coming back to their competitive scene and acknowledging that they do have a competitive Warhammer base. However, I'm also very aware that Games Workshop like putting a lot of protections around everything that they are responsible for. Specifically, certain models that involve being printed via filament and bits and pieces like that, and whether or not that will stunt eligibility for certain events. You can have whatever opinion you want on it, but to me, that's a bit scary right now. I'm not really sure how that's all going to integrate yet, and I think a lot of it is going to come down on basically how much control they take over what allows you to qualify for the ITC and whether or not it shifts in any meaningful way from its current.
Yep.
What I'd also really like to see, based on how we're seeing things like the OCS pop up and bits and pieces like that, is we could get a lot more like spread out data in terms of things like local scenes. So we could be talking about genuinely having nationally recognized, like more splits in terms of national recognition for ITC, stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of possibilities out there, but I think until we get more data on the direction of the change, we're not going to know much more.
Yeah. Adam, as a TO, I know you and Simon and Josh run a lot of RTTs and teams events in South Australia, as well as the championship event. What are your thoughts?
Look, I think it's a positive thing. I think that Jack's concerns are reasonable, and I think that that's maybe something that we will see in the future. I don't see it happening in the next couple of years. I think that's probably a stone they'll kick down the road. I have a pretty good relationship with Mike Brandt and also with Zach Rochner from GW. So as far as they go, I think they're both very reasonable guys. And I think that we will see that pertain to the events. We'll probably still keep most of the autonomy that we have as far as running events within the ITC. I think that's overall a positive. I think I know that no one from there is going to be watching this, so I don't really have anything reason not to say it. I think that FLG have kind of checked out over the last couple of years with regards to a lot of it. I think the ITC rankings on their website proves that. Like, it's just a pain in the ass to load anything up, and it constantly jumps back, and you'd speak to them about it and nothing. And I get it. They're a business. They've got their own shit to do, and they're running their own events, and I understand that. So I think that this being handed over to GW is probably overall a net positive. And as far as the ITC goes, I think that we could see a shift, and we could see that the ITC season may end up aligning with WCW instead of with LVO. And LVO may just become another event in the calendar for ITC rather than the capstone. Which presents some interesting challenges for Uprising, and to be honest, wouldn't be the worst thing, because with LVO moving to beforehand, it also presents ridiculous challenges for Uprising. So we'll see. Who knows? Maybe Uprising ends up being in August, September moving forward. We might have 2 Uprisings this year. Who knows?
Yeah. I think, I'm more likely with Jack. I'm not going to say it's a negative. I'm not going to say it's positive, because I can see that there can be positives, 100%. I think probably out of it, my biggest concern, because they did mention this in the article, is the The fact that they're going to regionalize rankings in such a way they're going to alter the algorithm. And so my concern more is that they're going to weight it potentially in such a way that a player who wins a 32-player GT in a relatively smaller scene might get a score that equates to, say, like a winner of, say, a 210-player tournament. And it doesn't really show... Sure, they're both winners. That's great. They both deserve recognition, but it doesn't show necessarily the caliber of player or the effort that the 210-player winner has gone through to actually achieve that, because they would have potentially had harder matchups. They would have had to have had a lot more possibilities to deal with, and going through that sequence, like even, take Uprising fully as an example, going to that top cut and coming first, something like that, I think it devalues the larger events and the winners of those larger events or the higher placings, and I understand why they're doing it. They want to give more recognition to the smaller events and more points so smaller communities can have a chance. But I think they're going to pay for it in the sense of that it's going to devalue those larger events across the globe.
I think they'll be reticent to do that because remember that GW runs a lot of those larger events. Like as far as largest events in the world outside the UK, GW is kind of running the biggest at the moment. Like LVO, sure, is still the biggest event, but the remainder of the FLG events generally are smaller than the GW events now. So I think that they'll be reticent to devalue their own events too much. But as I said, I certainly see that there can be concerns with it. So it's all up in the air at the moment. But I think that at least for the next 12 months, we'll see the status quo for now. And then we might see some more sweeping changes after that. So kick that stone down the road and see how we go.
Yeah, 100%. Which it'll be interesting to see what they do nonetheless. And we got Palitech in chat also saying that stat checks ELO is also another thing that we've got up our sleeves in terms of rankings. To if ITC does that and then bring in stat check in addition, we'll work it out as a competitive scene, not just here in Australia, but across the world. So, having mentioned the Warhammer World Championships, do you want to talk about some of the prizes you've got on offer, particularly with that in play?
So first overall at the event, wins a golden ticket, Willy Wonka style, to the World Championships of Warhammer in wherever it is this year. I assume probably Atlanta again, and return flights to the value of 2,500 as well. So that was more than enough to get Liam there this year. So I imagine that it will continue to be more than enough. Winner of the event overall, we were doing the prize breakdown today. I think the winner of the event was 1,500, 1,200, something like that. But overall, we're looking... sorry, that's not the winner of the event. Sorry, that's the winner of the ITC. And then second, we're pricing all the way down to 10th. So second is getting like $800 or $900, and then all the way down to 10th getting their ticket price back, basically. We've got... I'm pretty sure it would be about $13,000 worth of prize support overall for the event. So last year with the pod system, we'd had like a pod winner and everyone kind of got a voucher in every pod. This year there's not as many vouchers, but there's still plenty available for all of those little things throughout the event as well. We've typically had like a champion of the bar and things like that for the person who's managed to drink the most alcohol and finish the first in the highest in the event. So fun things like that. We've got the bounty board we'll have this year as well. Highest ranked player from every state. I might have to get that info from you, Scotty. Save me trying to navigate the ITC website because it's not the best.
No worries.
But yeah, so we've got all of that kind of stuff that we normally have going on, and just it's just a metric crap ton of prize support coming through. So
yeah, for sure. In terms of FAQs, you guys are running LVO and WTC alongside each other, as well as having done your own clarifications document as well, I understand.
Yeah, look, we mainly are just running the WTC one. We initially intended to integrate the LVO one, but to be honest, they made some weird calls and they integrated a lot of the World Championships of Warhammer stuff, which personally I tend to agree with, but at some point you have to choose something and run with it. And we just decided this year, instead of fielding 500 questions and having our own individual questions and answers for those questions, that it was just easier to run off of the WTC one, take it what comes of it. Personally, I despise the WTC FAQ. I think it makes some stupid calls, but every FAQ does. So it is what it is. And we've gone that way. So
yep, cool. Then not much else of note outside of maybe just noting how you guys are doing WYSIWYG and Battle Ready, just so players are a bit more aware. I know you made a post on Facebook from the page being like, last year you guys were a bit more lenient on that. So do you want to just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so last year we had the data slate drop in about 10 days out from the event. So we made the difficult decision to adapt the data slate because we wanted to be playing the most current set of rules at the time, which meant that we were a bit more lenient on what you see is what you get, and a little bit more lenient on Battle Ready because, 10 days is not a great deal of time to get stuff painted when you do need to make changes. But this year we will be back to actual Battle Ready standard out of the book or wherever you want to find that image. I was astonished when I posted that up, someone going, what is Battle Ready? And I'm like, mate, it's been in like all the GW books for like the last 5 years. Like there's a picture right here showing you what Battle Ready is. Yeah. So I expect to have some interesting discussions on day one around Battle Ready. Last time we went hard, which was 2022, so 2022. We had a couple of interesting discussions. We will have a paint station set up so that people are welcome after round one if they're not Battle Ready to do what they need to do to get the models done. But it will come down to every model in your army. If you've got one guy had an unbased assassin, that's not Battle Ready. So another guy had a beautifully painted Ravenwing army, and then he had a couple of bikes which were just black and had the rims on the tires painted silver. And I was like, well, that's not Battle Ready. Like, it doesn't match the rest of the army. You haven't put in the effort. You can clearly see that that's not the same. So this year will be a little bit harsher on Battle Ready. So people better be ready for Battle Ready.
Yep.
And another important thing as like for player etiquette, don't take that out on the TOs. Like, Battle Ready is something that is an expectation that has existed for every tournament, since it was conceptualized. So have a discussion, but keep it civil. The fact they're offering a paint station, I know even from last year, the fact that you guys are willing to basically say, like, give a second chance and go fix it up is far more than I would expect from a Battle Ready perspective. So obviously it could suck, but keep it civil. Don't be rude with it. It is what it is.
Yeah, another thing to note is we did actually have someone last year who we didn't give Battle Ready to. We made it clear he wasn't Battle Ready. And then after round 3, we discovered he had been scoring 95 points and 92 points and 97 points. And we're like, oh, it's an interesting score. And the counter argument from him was that his opponents had put the score in. So this year there will be none of that. If you are found to have a score that you cannot possibly have with Battle Ready and found to have claimed Battle Ready when you weren't Battle Ready, if you haven't been advised by a TO that you've managed to pass with a change of painting or whatever, it'll be an instant red card and you'll just be out of the event because you are literally cheating everybody else in the event out of things. So It's not fair for anyone if you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah, 100% agree with it. 100% agree. All right, so let's jump off the players back in the format and terrain. Let's jump into some of the fun stuff, which is going to be the missions. So 8 rounds always provides an interesting challenge when it comes to the missions. And I'm going to kind of rapid fire through these because these are all from the Leviathan GT pack. And the one thing that we were chatting about before we started up the stream was that they are all the GW terrain layouts, utilizing the Uprising terrain that you guys have got. And they're going to be all the same 3 layouts for every mission. So it means you only have to set up the table once and they're good, basically.
Correct. Yeah, we didn't want to have to put it on players to be changing between games because our terrain doesn't match the GW one. So sometimes there'll be a genuine question of which piece goes where. So it's just easier for us to set it all up at the same time. And then we don't have the time to be changing 105 tables between rounds. So the easiest solution was there's 10 missions that just use layouts 1, 3, and 4. Let's just choose 8 missions out of those 10 missions. Luckily, 2 of them turned out to be crap, so they were easy to kick to the curb, and that left us with 8 of them. So,
yeah, very, very straightforward way to go about it. So, round 1 is Search and Destroy with Chilling Rain and Supply Drop. I would say this is a good round 1 mission. You get it out of the way nice and early. And,
exactly right.
Yeah, yep.
Because sometimes nobody likes being bullied off being able to score points. Because this one does force that issue pretty heavily with removing objectives by the end of the game.
We were talking earlier, obviously. In my mind, there are 3 missions that I think are probably the worst in the pack, and that's playing football as Warhammer. Deploy servo skulls for anyone that doesn't. Spawning objectives, and supply drops probably the other one I put up there because it is so dependent on everything. Like, there are so many times you play supply drop, you deploy an army, and you just like, yeah, this is gonna suck. But getting it out of the way round 1 is a good way to do that. Because the last thing you'd want is to have the entire of Uprising come down to supply drop.
Exactly right. We were very cognizant. We didn't even want it near the top cut game as well. So we were very cognizant of just keeping it away from the top stuff. At the same time, it's good to have a couple of funky missions that mean that you can't just build a list that does the exact same thing all the time. So we were like, let's just get it out of the way straight up in round 1. And that way, if someone does cop a bad beat, they know they just have to go hard for the next 4 games if they want a chance at making that top cut. So.
Yeah, 100%. Round 2 is Sweeping Engagement with Scrambler Fields and the Ritual. So, this is I've always found this mission combo very interesting because you only have the one objective in the center. So you can't deep strike units directly onto it, you can't infiltrate onto it, you can't scout onto it, and you can't redeploy onto it. So it's basically being like, okay, cool, I can redeploy anywhere else in No Man's Land except for that 7.5-inch diameter circle in the middle. So
it certainly makes it a lot more challenging. I personally, this is one of the other missions that I personally, I actually prefer soccer to this. But it's part of the mission pack, and a lot of people tend to like this one for whatever ridiculous reason that is. So.
A lot of people tend to like this mission because you can screen your opponent's army off with objective markers. That is absolutely a thing you can do. So, pro tip for everyone at Uprising that isn't my round 2 opponent, you can use the objectives to screen.
Yeah, wow, I didn't even recognize that, but yeah, that is huge. Especially, when we get into the meta, Hypercrypt or Grey Knights being a thing, right? Then mission 3, we've got Search and Destroy, Hidden Supplies, Priority Targets. So this one is the extra objective, priority targets. This one's basically allowing both players to hold 3 at the end of the game, max primary, and it's just, you sit on 3 objectives, your opponent sits on 3 objectives, let's have some fun. So
yeah, nice easy one for end of the first day. So
yeah,
I cannot thank you enough for making round 3 an easy mission, because there's nothing better than ending a tournament with a mission that's just play Warhammer.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right, coming in to day 2, round 4 is Crucible of Battle, Chilling Rain with Purge the Foe, or as we like to call it, Old Hammer. Because it's basically like 8th or 9th edition 40k. Where
it's 8th at ITC.
Yeah.
Like, kill more, hold more. Yep.
So the other thing across all of these missions you might notice, there is actually no flat edge deployments. These are all corner focused deployments as well. Which I thought was, that's really interesting. It helps with stream setup too.
Yeah, look, it was actually a byproduct of having to have the set terrain layouts that we needed. So to be honest, we didn't even realize that this was the case until we had posted the missions, and we were like, oh, none of these come with a Dawn of War deployment. We're like, that's less than ideal. But at the same time, Dawn of War is also pretty bad most of the time. If you go up against the shooting army, you can legitimately just lose. So
Yep.
Cool. So round 5 is sweeping engagement, chosen battlefield, taken hold. This is where it's going to separate the boys from the men, because placing those objectives is crucial. So it's going to determine who goes into that top cut.
And an important one for anyone playing is just remember, when you're setting this up, you deploy the objectives before you roll off to see who gets what side.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a very important thing to know.
Yeah.
If you
you're
put
loading
them
up
to one
side.
Yep, it's still a 50-50. So just to have it on record, be aware.
Yeah, 100%.
But again, anytime you've got players able to impact their own battlefield, you're going to see player skill shine. So again, perfect round 5 in my mind.
Yep, agree. 100% agree. Round 6 for the end of day 2 is Crucible, Battle, Chilling, Rain, and Vital Ground. So this is, again, 4 objectives. You score points for holding your home, middle, and opponents to varying levels. And there's only the 4 objectives, so you remove the center with this one. So pretty decent mission to also help separate the field a little bit, because it'll determine, are you able to set up and score a solid primary and also get your secondaries at the same time? So again, it just differentiates on that skill level once again.
Yeah, this one's gonna determine the top cut as well. So if you're looking to get into that top one, you better be making sure that regardless of whether you've already dropped a game or drawn a game, if you want to get into that top area, you need to be on your game and getting this one maximum points to walk out of this game. So
yeah.
And huge as well, quickly, for fixed and tactical.
Yes.
Obviously, tactical is a lot weaker in this mission, just given that you have less to play for in the middle.
Yeah. Round 7, so round 1 on day 3 is Crucible, Battle, Chilling Rain, priority targets once again. But this time, no additional objective. So it means that you're fighting over one of those objectives and to score those 15 points at the end of the round, which can determine who wins and loses. Those 5 points can be so crucial.
Yeah, quite often you find that that game, the scores are so tight generally. So,
And then
100%.
the final round, Search and Destroy, Chilling Rain, and Take and Hold. A nice simple one, straightforward. Just hold 3. That's all you got to do, is just hold 3. So I think overall, awesome missions. I love the order. The additional rules in there, of course, in the Leviathan pack, you've got the 3 that you generally see: Scrambler Fields, Hidden Supplies, Chosen Battlefield. They're all spread out intermittently. They're not like they're all on day 1 and the rest is just Chilling Rain. It's like, no, you got 2 on day 1, 1 on day 2, none on day 3. Kind of tapers it, which is nice. I like that. But yeah, overall, great mission ordering.
Yeah, we did put a bit more thought into it this year. Once we had our 8 missions, we really thought about it, and we sat down and we talked it out for quite a bit, and we got the cards out and laid them out in front of us and made sure that it flowed fairly well, and we were just cognizant of where we had certain things for the top cut and things like that. So
yeah, for sure. All right, so now we get into the fun stuff, ladies and gentlemen. The meta breakdown for Uprising. This is going to be pretty big because 210 players. It makes up a decent chunk of representation, and it's actually awesome to see the spread of this meta. So, to kick us off with the Space Marine Super Faction, there are 44 players in attendance, making up 21% of the meta. You've got 20 Adeptus Astartes players that's spread between Ultramarines, just base Adeptus Astartes, Salamanders, and Raven Guard as well. There's 9 Black Templars, 7 Dark Angels, 6 Space Wolves, 1 Blood Angels player, and 1 Death Watch player. My boys, the Death Watch. Good to see at least one list in there.
It's the last time we'll ever see 7 Dark Angels players in 10th edition.
Yes. Then we've got the Imperium Super Faction with 42 players being 20% of the meta. 10 Astra Militarum, 8 Adeptus Mechanicus, 7 Adeptus Custodes, 7 Grey Knights, 6 Adeptus Sororitas, and 4 Imperial Knights. Then Chaos Super Faction, being the largest super faction of 59 players, making up 28.1% of the meta, is 14 Chaos Space Marine players, 14 Chaos Knight players, and 14 World Eaters players, followed by 8 Death Guard, 6 Chaos Demons, and 3,000 Suns. Then we jump into the Xenos factions, which we've got the Eldari Super Faction making up 14 players, of making 6.6% of the meta, just being 14 Eldari quickly. Players.
The Eldari Super Faction at this point is Eldari.
Yeah.
I love Drukhari to bits, but like they could honestly be looped into Xenos at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. Then we have got the Hivemind Super Faction being 9 players, which is 4.3% of the meta, 8 Tyranid players, and 1 Gene Stealer Cult player in there as well. Shout out to Taylor Hill running the GSC on the weekend, the only GSC player. Then we've got the Xenos Super Faction being 42 players, which is 20% of the meta, with 14 Necrons, 12 Orcs, 9 Votan, and 7 Tau Empire. So I think the only faction we don't see is Drukhari out of all of that. So yep. I think that's a really solid spread in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. I'm really happy with the spread. I would have liked to see less chaos stuff and probably less Tyranids because I just hate Tyranids. But otherwise, it's fine.
Yeah. I'm with you there on Tyranids. They're my white whale army. I always seem to never get the win against them.
Mm-hmm.
So going to the faction podium, you've got Adeptus Astartes coming in first with 20 players, making 9.5% of the meta. Then in second place, you've got an equal 5-way tie with Eldari, Chaos Space Marines, Chaos Knights, Necrons, and World Eaters with 14 players apiece, making up 33.3% of the attending meta. And then in third place, you have Orcs with 12 players making up 5.7% of players, which means for the faction podium, there is 102 players in those top 7 factions, make up 48.6% of the overall meta.
So now is an unfortunate time to know that half of the meta is problem threats. Like, obviously, you need to have a plan for CK, you need to have a plan for Space Marines, you need to have a plan for what you should have going into Uprising, but now is a really good time to look at those factions and lock down your plan against them.
100%. 100%. I think it's going to be really... Personally, I love the spread, particularly in the Imperium. Like, there's, a solid number of players for, AdMech, which is good to see, particularly after they've just gotten their codex, and they've been waning in attendance recently. Same with Grey Knights. Imperial Knights are still kind of waning as well, but 4 players is still pretty good, I would say. And, 10 Astra Militarum, we had at Exterminatus, we had 9 out of 76 players, which was like blowout, but this is like, no, it's reasonable. Is there anything that really stands out to you, Adam?
Look, I think there's a couple of things that really stand out. The prevalence of the Chaos Knights is astonishing to me, that we have as many Chaos Knights as we do Chaos Space Marines. I personally find Chaos Space Marines right now to be the boogeyman. They just answer every question that you have and then some. So the fact that we have as many Chaos Knight players as we do them, I also think World Eaters are a much overrated faction, and I think that a lot of their weaknesses are going to be exposed at the event. Okay. I think Astra Militarum is interesting with the presence that it has. Unfortunately, I think they're about 150 points away from actually being a winning kind of faction. But overall, I think Chaos Space Marines is the one to beat, and I know there's quite a few good players on Chaos Space Marines. Marines, Vanguard's obviously been a problem for a little while. I call it Marine Elder. But the reality of it is, I think that a lot of the problems that it presents have been solved, and I think that the Chaos Space Marine lists will be the ones to really cut into the Vanguard players. So I think we'll see a few of them drop to Chaos Space Marine players as the weekend goes on.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to throw up a couple of wagon wheels for you, Chad. If you're a fan of cricket, you'll know what these more or less refer to. So we've got the super faction spread there, so you can kind of see what it looks like overall, with those massive chunks being, Xenos and Imperium being equal, Space Marines just a little bit more of the pie from them, and then Chaos just taking up a solid third. It's just a lot. Then we have got the overall factions. So a nice, good spread with, of course, Space Marines being such a large percentage there. But, nothing is too minuscule in there. Nothing's, we do have some, I'm trying to see what that small faction right in the middle there is. It hasn't come up when I've printed it. So it's probably one that's got maybe Imperial Knights because it's smaller representation, or maybe Death Watch even in there. Same with Blood Angels being around. But the interesting stuff we're going to jump into is the detachments. Now, for Space Marines, this is where things get very interesting. Vanguard Spearhead of all... Now, this is all chapters. This isn't just Adeptus Astartes. This is of all 44 players. Vanguard Spearhead makes up 44.2%, which is huge. And there is only one faction in the Space Marine breakdown, which is Blood Angels, that isn't running Vanguard. Death Watch is Vanguard, Black Templars have Vanguard, Dark Angels have Vanguard, Space Wolves have Vanguard, Ultramarines Vanguard, very prevalent. There's just so much in the Vanguard, so definitely agree with you, Adam, that it's starting to become very much an issue in the meta.
It's a known commodity as well, which I think is part of the issue. I think that it's very much a gotcha army. The first couple of times you play it, you're like, oh, I forgot you could run 6 inches away when I charge you and all that kind of stuff. But once you've seen the tricks a few times and you can get your head around it, I think it's a very beatable army. So I think that we'll see that Vanguard will have good representation, but I don't think that it'll occupy much of the top echelons in the end. So.
Yep. Some notable ones. One of the Dark Angels players is running the Unforgiven Task Force. So there is one Unforgiven Task Force in there for the Dark Angels. You've got Righteous Crusaders in there as well for Black Templars. Black Templars being one of the top factions at the moment. With only having those 9 players, you're seeing the majority of them running Righteous Crusaders, being 5 players in there. 2 of them are running Ironstorm and 2 are running Gladius. So a good mix in there for them. You've got a decent representation for Stormlance, which for the majority is actually just coming across the spread. It's not any particular faction that's bringing Stormlance in there. Ironstorm has got double the amount of Stormlance, and it's equal to the amount of Gladiuses that there are. So it's a good mix between them as well, with what factions are taking Ironstorm or Gladius. And then Firestorm, there is a few of them around, I believe. Just looking at my notes here, I've got 3 on my sheet, and they're all just under Astartes. I believe both Salamanders players are running them. So thematic in that sense.
There's at least
well.
one local guy who's running it. So
yeah,
and that's Salamanders.
Yeah. Then we get to the Tyrannid detachments. Now, this is very interesting. Across 8 players, 6 of them are running Invasion Fleet. And I think it's because it's so versatile, because you can choose what you get the buff for at the start of the game. So you can choose it knowing what you're playing into, rather than being focused into saying Vanguard Onslaught or Synaptic Nexus, which are the other 2 players. They've both one Vanguard Onslaught, one Synaptic Nexus. So quite a good spread. At least it's not all Invasion Fleet, but 6 out of 8 is pretty big for that.
And an interesting point that has probably been brought up before in terms of codexes is the Vanguard detachments for pretty much every codex seem to be one of the strongest on initial release and give a lot of capacity for basically stat checking your opponent. You're talking debuffs to hit, reactionary moves, all those beautiful things that allow you agency in games. So I'm actually surprised there's not more Vanguard Tyranids. I think that's one that's seen a lot of play, although I think that may be a model restriction thing, because that is a very technical army. For a move-based army, this is an 8-round event, so there's a lot of time you would be spending moving bugs. So it actually jumps out to me as weird that Invasion Fleet is actually at the top of that list, though.
I think in the meta that is going to be at Uprising, I think it gives you the toolbox for what you need to deal with. It gives you the lethal hits when you need it. It gives you the sustained hits when you need it. You can take the right tool for when you need it. And I think that's why it's kind of prevalent, in my personal opinion. Then we'll jump into AdMech. There are 2 detachments. The majority of AdMech players are playing the Hunter cohort. There is, I believe, 1 player playing the cohort Cybernetica. So
Godspeed.
Yeah. So
event winner.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see how the AdMech go over the weekend. Obviously, we're going to look at one of the AdMech lists in a little bit as well. And then to finish off our look at the detachment, we're going to have a look at Necrons. And this was something I found very interesting because, yes, there are 7 Canoptic Court making up 50%. There are 5 Hypercrypt Legion, and there are 2 Awakened Dynasty. I was expecting a 50-50 split between Hypercrypt and Canoptic Court.
Yeah, a couple of our players, well, when I say a couple, I think 3 of the 4 that were playing the event were looking at doing Necrons, and they were going back and forth between Hypercrypt and Canoptic. And I had said to them initially, I was like, I think there is a reasonable chance that I could win an event like Uprising with 18 Wraiths. They are just so durable that you can do it. And then a couple of our guys ended up pivoting to Hypercraft and then Hypercrypt, and then a couple went back, and there's been a bit of back and forth. So I think it's actually one where the 2 are kind of fairly evenly matched. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Obviously now LVO has been won by something, but that was on the back of the WCW FAQ. So unless the world adopts that on a more regular basis, I think that it's going to be a case of a bit of a 50-50 split, and they're both quite good, which is a good place for Necrons to be in, because it's nice to have 2 things, because it's a lot harder for GW to nerf you into the ground. So
yeah. And would I be right in thinking you're also using the most recent FAQ for Necrons as well that includes the Immortal change?
Correct. That came in well and truly before rules cut off. So
yeah, cool. So that would impact as well players wanting to play Hypercrypt over Canoptic Court, because it got ruled. I think it was for Canoptic Court that you could only use it on Canoptic or Cryptech units.
Correct.
And people were using it on Tesla Immortals and going nuts with the dev wounds, with rerolls to wound against units on objectives.
Yeah.
All right. So I think detachment-wise for the codexes that we know, relatively good spread once again. Of course, there's some massive chunks taken out from Tyranids and AdMech. Obviously, those being favorable at the moment. But going forward, going to be really solid to see how all of them perform over the course of the week. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of data that we can analyze after the event as well. So, now that we've looked at the meta, let's jump in to checking out a couple of the lists that the players are running this weekend. And the first one we are looking at is Mr. Brody Middleton. He is obviously first place in the South Pacific ITC currently. He is running an Ultramarines Vanguard. So he has got the Apothecary Biologist with the Blade Driven Deep, so it gives the unit infiltrate. The Librarian in Phobos armor, Lieutenant with combi weapon for that lone op, infiltrate scout, just jump around, do all kinds of shenanigans. Marnia's Cowl Guard with 2 Victrix Honor Guard, a unit of 6 aggressors with the Bolter Storm gauntlets and grenade launchers, so using those lethal hits to get as much damage through without having to roll the wound. Then you've also got the assault intercessors with jump pack, a 5-man with 2 plasma pistols and a power fist on the sergeant. Double ballistas dreadnoughts. That's interesting to me. A unit of 6 Devastator Centurions with grav cannons and Centurion missile launchers. All right. Then 2 units of 6 Inceptors. One is all assault bolters, the other is all plasma. And then a unit of 5 infiltrators with the comms array helix gauntlet. Then 2 units of 5 scouts. They've got a heavy bolter, a sniper rifle, close combat weapon on the sergeant, and the rest of the unit has got 2 bolters. So Alex, the Greek, has kindly done me some notes here. Just to kind of give a brief run through of what this list actually does. So he's running full bricks of units to maximize strat benefits. So Centurions, Aggressors, the double Inceptors, with one of them every turn getting +1 hit, +1 AP for the 1 CP. A lot of good zoning tools with lone op infiltrators and early pressure on the scouts infiltrating. And the list plays to ensure that the key units strike first, so using terrain and then deep striking, moving through walls and shoot will be the play. Being able to infiltrate the unit of aggressors behind terrain so they can't be shot through, and then moving through and being able to shoot now for strike pretty early on is going to be pretty strong for that list. Gentlemen, what do we think?
I really love the ballistas. We had a player, we went to VTC, and he was running Vanguard, and he had 2 ballistas dreadnoughts in there, and he took them out, and I was annoyed that he took them out because they provide that long-range punch that you really need when you're dealing with something like a Forge Fiend or something like that in the backfield. So it certainly shores up a couple of the issues. Lone op, arguably the best rule in the game, so fitting in a few units with that. But yeah, ultimately, my thoughts on this is beyond the ballistas, pretty standard fare for this kind of list. And Brody is a top player, and I expect him to do very well. But I think that he's probably just going to run into a bit of a wall when he runs into another adequately skilled player on Chaos Space Marines, because I think that this Chaos Space Marines presents a real problem for Vanguard. So,
Can I ask an interesting follow-up question? You earlier mentioned that Vanguard are basically Space Marine Elder. Seeing as we're talking about a Vanguard list, could you elaborate on the tactics and why they play a similar role in the meta to Elder in your mind?
So a lot of what they do is you can't interact with me. Admittedly, these guys are a lot tougher than Elder, but Elder rely on the you can't interact with me in so many ways as well. So you can't interact with the Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. You can't interact with the Librarian and Phobos Armor attached to the Infiltrators. You can't interact with me by charging me, because I will just move 6 inches away from you when you charge me. It just makes everything so much harder to get to grips with. And it gives it just a really good board presence in that regard. Early pressure from the Marnius Calgar unit infiltrating up the board into a piece of terrain, and then you have to go, well, they can get to me pretty quickly. So it's just a lot of similar things, and they fill a very similar role to what Elder do in the meta, as far as just removing your ability to interact with them while still doing what they want to do. Admittedly, these guys don't have the unit count. There's certainly a lot less units here. I think that the choice of the grav cannons on the Centurions is interesting. I mean, they're not bad. They're certainly fine. But the range can be a bit of an issue because you are getting that little bit closer, and that little bit closer does mean that 6-inch move away the stratagem does become a little bit more dicey, and there are plenty of units in the game that can pick up a Centurion unit in one round of combat. So
yeah, I think it's a very interesting list. The ballistas, again, same as you, Adam, that stands out to me. The loadout on the Centurions. I've seen a Vanguard list. We had Josh Brody, who is also playing Vanguard this weekend, run las cannons on his Centurions.
That's the typical fare. I've seen mainly las cannons or las cannons and grav cannons, but I don't think I've actually come across a list with just grav in it yet. So
I think it could be something that he's maybe teched into dealing with something a bit different. Because from memory, it's a strength 5, neg 1, 2 damage profile. It's like a heavy bolter.
Yeah, it's anti-vehicle 2+, which is the
Yep.
key component. So it will be very good into the Chaos Knights.
Yeah.
However, from my experience having seen a few games, Chaos Knights generally didn't really have much of a chance versus these guys anyway, as they managed to get around quite well. So whether he's teched for that or not, I don't really know. But who knows?
Yeah, the other thought that comes to mind is he could have teched into CSM to deal with the Forge Fiends.
Yeah, look, that's certainly something that I could have done, but the last cannons do it just as well. The last cannons, 4 rerolls to hit, 4 rerolls to wound. Like they do it quite well. So it's an interesting choice. I mean, he's a much better player than I am, so I'm sure he has exactly what he's going to do with them. But it stands out as a bit of an oddity to the list. Stands alone, I think, against most of the other Vanguard lists, which will be interesting to see how it goes.
And as a comment on Last Cannons versus Grab for Forge Fiends, one of the big things with CSM is they're actually very good at screening off their own army. So Grab and that range disparity is actually probably a detriment in that matchup. Again, I'm going to trust Brodie Middleton. Like, very good player. Clearly knows what he's doing. Clearly has a plan as to why he has Grab. But it will remain an interesting thing, and I'm excited to see how it gets tested out over the course of 8 rounds.
Yeah.
It actually, thinking about it, it actually could be a mirror. It could be a mirror thing, just getting more shots in the mirror. That's what it could be, actually.
Yeah. All right, so next up, we're going to look at Alex and Glezos, or Alex the Greek's list. Now, I've got to read this top line of his list. It is absolutely hilarious. He says, Skitarii have no output. I mean it. Seriously, they do no damage. Like 0. None. You can't deal damage with Skitarii Horde list, bro. I'm serious. You're not going to be able to kill anything. Trust me. Nothing in the list can kill even a simple Marine. Enjoy getting clocked out by rolling dice that will do 0 damage, lol. That is literally the tagline of his list. So we've got a Skitarii Marshal. You got 3 Skitarii Marshals. One's the Warlord. Each of them have got an enhancement. One has got the Battle Sphere uplink. The other's got the Clandestine Infiltrator. And the third one has got the Veiled Hunter. He's got a single unit of Rangers with the Omnispecs, Plasma Calavar, Transarchibus, Transuranic Archibus. I apologize there. And the Arc Rifle in there too. And then 6 units of Vanguard, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units of Vanguard, all running Arc Rifle, Omnispecs, Plasma Calavar, Radium Carbines, and the Transuranic Archibus. Then he's got 4 Dune Riders with the Heavy Stubber Arrays, a unit of 2 units of 5 Taraxi Skystalkers with Flechette Blasters and Taser Goad on the Alpha. Then 3 units of 10 Sterilizers with the Phosphor Torches, Flechette and Taser Goad on the Alpha there as well. And then 3 units of 3 Cerberus Raiders, just with their Galvanic Carbines and their Enhanced Data Tethers there too. And then you've got a unit of 5 Sakarian Infiltrators with their Flechette Blasters, Taser Goads, a Calidus Assassin, and Lord Inquisitor Kyra Draxus in there as well. Now, he's given me some notes on his own list as well. So his list is basically speed, speed, speed. If you're too aggressive and not Orcs or World Eaters, you will en masse get tagged and lose all your output. If you're too passive, you get 0 board presence. Delicate balance is needed to making sure you understand and don't take for granted their speed and durability. Sitting on objectives makes AdMech's output heavily increase. AdMech is a poor RNG army for hit rolls and wound rolls, but at least this is designed around consistency by having full hit rerolls and wound rerolls on the Skitarii, but also auto hits with full rerolls to wound on the Taraxi. Skystalkers can move 12 inches after shooting, even from Deep Strike. Draxus gets the following benefits whilst being a part of a Skitarii battle line unit. Ignores cover, full rerolls to wound, plus 1 AP, Rad Zone, which is minus 1 AC aura, and Assault on all weapons. Then you've got the strats as well, because that's all just baked in. This, I've seen this list on stream. It is no joke. It is no joke.
I've actually had the privilege of playing against this list. And everything except for the fact that Skitarii have now no output there is actual fact. It's very good at taking the board. Vanguard having the minus 1 OC aura means that when you're scrapping for objectives with Skitarii, that is a real problem. The amount of fire and fade durability he has allows him to jump onto the board wherever he wants to. And things like Draxus, again, Inquisitors being added and soaking up all the benefits from their unit, massively increase that army. It is a pressure army inherently. And one of the things you need to know going into that matchup is, can I stat check the AdMech? Because once those martial units get full rerolls, hits, and wounds, they can kill units. The output's not great. You can tag them, but if you're going to start tagging the AdMech list, you really need to know if it's a good decision moment to moment. It's a list that's going to really... frankly, as far as I'm aware, Alex's biggest problem is a chess clock. As was pointed out, like, this is a big list. It has a lot of big movement. I really want to see it played, but I would never want to play it personally.
Yeah.
Just think going into it, if you do have to play against it, can I actually contest the mid board? Because if you do not over 2 turns, you won't be moving. It's very good at locking armies in.
AdMech is one of those things that literally this list could be written in zeros and ones. I don't understand it. I don't understand what it does. I stand at the table and I play AdMech and they're like, oh, we do X. I'm like, cool, I believe you. Sounds reasonable. It's just so hard to keep track of what's going on because they used to have so many layers of rules upon rules upon rules. And it's been that way since AdMech dropped 6 years ago or whatever it was. So.
Yeah. Having seen it on stream, I kind of understand some of the tech. But yeah, basically what you were saying, Jack, where he goes and he just either tags you all up, or he just gets on the objectives and does the output to just kill your units, is really the way that it was played. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he goes into the meta that is present at Uprising. Alrighty, third list. And whilst that list loads, I want to thank everyone who is joining us in chat. Great to have you all joining us. Hope you are enjoying the preview this evening for Uprising Adelaide as the South Pacific ITC end of season tournament for 23-24 season. All right, so next up, we have got Michael Wood's Death Guard army list. At least I believe it is Michael Wood. I've just got to look at my notes. Yes, it is. So Michael Wood's Death Guard army list. So these guys got a pretty decent buff with their detachment, being able to choose a variety of different detachment rules that they could have at the start of the game. We've got the Biologist Putrefier in there, 3 Flower Blight Spawn, a Lord of Virulence, 2 Malignant Plaguecasters, and Mortarion, who is the Warlord. Then a unit of 10 Plague Marines with Plasma Pistol and Heavy Plague Weapon on the champion. In there, you've got 2 Belchers and 2 Plague Spewers as well. Make that... then you've actually also got a unit of 5 that has got 1 Belcher, 1 Spewer with a Plasma Gun in there as well. Then another unit of 10 with the champion having Heavy Plague Weapon, Plasma Pistol, 2 Plague Belchers, and 2 Plague Spewers in there with a bunch of Heavy Plague Weapons as well. So much going on in this list. There's 3 Rhinos with Havoc Launchers, Combi Bolters ×2 as well. Yeah, they can't take Hunter Killers because they're not Imperial, so no there. Then you've got 6 Death Shroud Terminators with the Man Reapers and Plague Spurn Gauntlets, and then 2 units of Plague Burst Crawlers with the Entropy Cannons and the Mortar. And then 3 Nurglings to do some infiltrating shenanigans. Considering he's one of the South Australian players, Adam, have you seen this list yourself? Have you got any insights?
I played a variation of this at a teams event we had a few months ago. I don't think it had Mortarion in it, so he's a recent addition to the list. Obviously, with the Plague Burst Crawlers and his ability to just ignore modifiers, it's a pretty decent little combo. And then every unit just has a bunch of really deadly flamers in it. So it's just a bunch of relatively tough units coming out of rhinos, going decent distances, being able to flame the crap out of something, charge something, and then just live because they're relatively tough, with Mortarion sitting at the back and just holding it down. Actually, I think he did have Mortarion in the list when I played him, but I think I iced him turn 1. But yeah, it's a interesting list. I think Death Guard are in a tough spot just because they are relatively slow. And no matter how good you make things that are slow, speed is still king in 40k and always will be. So I think that there's going to be a bit of a tough slog for Michael, especially going up against some of the bigger players and especially against some of the Vanguard lists as well. So I imagine this is probably like a 5-3, 6-2 kind of scenario.
Any thoughts, Jack? Unless
I actually haven't played Death Guard yet in this edition, so this is a bit of an unknown for me. Obviously, like Invasion Fleet, one of the things I pick up on them is now that they have the option of choosing their infection at the start of the game, they do have choice. They do have a bit more agency there. One to watch out for is the OC debuff, because that is incredibly relevant in certain matchups if played well.
Yeah, 100%.
Otherwise, again, I'll harp on what Adam said. Movement is key. And so Death Guard is one of those armies that will always inherently struggle with movement. Sometimes the answer with Death Guard is keeping them to their movement value. Even from 9th Ed, one of the great solutions to Death Guard was making sure they're not making big charges. They're not using the charge phase to gain movement. But unfortunately, a bit of an unknown for me.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit of an unknown for me as well, I'll be honest. But seeing Mortarion on the table is a good, it's good to see him actually being fielded personally. We commonly see Magnus, or you commonly see the Lion, or you commonly see Gilliman, but not really Mortarion at the moment. So it's good to see him at least out and about. But outside of that, the Deadly Flamers moving up, getting in range with the Rhinos, utilizing the Rhinos for their movement. Being 2 units of 10 and 1 unit of 5, I think you'll likely see him send 1 unit of 10 to each of the corner No Man's Land objectives and send the unit of 5 with a bunch of characters and Mortarion backing up as, potentially the mid-board threat to be like, you've got to come and deal with either 2 deadly units on each flank, or you've got to deal with this entire mess in the middle. As well. So it'll be really interesting to see how he plays it if we get a chance to see it on stream. Then we'll go into our next list, which is going to be Will Wyckoff's Votan list. Now, I have seen this list played on stream as well. Funnily enough, it was the game against Alex the Greek from Exterminars. However, it is tweaked a little bit since that game. So he has got the Brockier Ironmaster with all the fixings in there with the Appraising Glare enhancement. 2 Carls, one is the Warlord, one is not. The one that isn't has got the Rampart Crest, Mask Gauntlet, and Vulcanite Disintegrator with a long list enhancement. The one that is the Warlord has got the Mask Gauntlet, Rampart Crest, Vulcanite Disintegrator, and the Grim Demeanor enhancement. Then he's got a single unit of 10 Hearthkin Warriors with the Comms Array. They've got the Bolters, a Weavefield Crest, Medipack, and Pan Spectral Scanner. Then 4 Sagittars with the L7 missile launchers and the Sagittor missile launchers as well. Then a unit of 6 Thunderkin with Graviton Blast Cannons. 3 units of 5 Sithonian Berserks. 2 of them have got the Concussion Mauls. 1 has got the Plasma Axes. All 3 have got the Mold Grenade Launchers. He's then got a unit of 2 units of 10 Hearthguard. 1 has got the Teleport Crest, the Grenade Launchers, Concussion Gauntlets with the Concussion Hammer and Vulcanite Disintegrators. The other one is basically the exact same, except it's got the Plasma Guns instead. And then 2 units of 3 Hearthkin Pioneers with the Magna Coil autocannons, the High Labs rotary cannon, pan spectral scanner, and roll bar searchlight in there as well. Very interesting list. I understand the little tweak that he's made. So previously he played one unit of Pioneers, one more unit of Pioneers, so he's dropped them and thrown in a unit of Sithonian Berserks. He did have 10 points extra in his previous list, so he's now sitting on exactly 2,000. But yeah, this list is highly mobile. It's got combat threats. Those deep striking Hearthguard are a problem when they come in, unless you're able to screen them. So Jack, what are your thoughts?
First off, this is an army that really highlights rapid ingress and the power that it's brought to the game. Votann, similar to Death Guard, don't have a lot of mobility, especially on their infantry. So things like Hearthkin are going to want to be rapid ingressing when they want, like, if you give them space. So whenever you play against an army like that, you should always just do this in 40k in general. Always consider, where would my opponent rapid ingress? Otherwise, again, Sagitars are critical for this match. Like, giving that mobility, that combat, it's such a varied list with so many stacking buffs. And it has so much stuff in it compared. Like, if you compare a Votann list pre and post points changes, they can all of a sudden contend just based on the unit count that they bring to the table.
Yeah. Adam, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, so I was previously on Votann. That they've been the army that I've been playing the last couple of months. So, couple of things. So, when I started playing Votann, I started with 18 Thunderkin because I was like, oh, these guys are amazing. And then my list went to having 12, and then went to having 6, then went to having 3, then went to having none. You just can never get them to the right spot. Any savvy player will just screen out the outflank on them. They're slow. They are short range. It's a real problem. I'm interested to see how it goes for him, but I think that ultimately they're a big point sink. Well, I mean, they're not that expensive, but I think those points can be better spent. I also was running the Berserks. I think the Berserks are fine in 1 or 2 units. I think 3 might be too much. They really need strategy and support. Hitting on 4s and only being AP2, it can be a bit hard when you're actually trying to punch through things. The Pioneers are amazing. The Terminators, both units are great. Like, you can't go past the Terminators. Like, honestly, the Terminators, the bikes, and the Sagittars make the army. Everything else is kind of just gravy as to what you put in. So I personally prefer the champions for the Terminator squads over the Carls. The Carls give them a 5-up invo, but the champions give them rerollable charges. And I can't make a 9-inch charge to save my life. I literally played a game yesterday with Votann. I had 7 total charges, including my rerolls at 9 inches, didn't make a single one. And my opponent made 1 charge at 9 inches and he rolled an 11. I was like, yeah, that's pretty par for course. So if you can make the 9-inch charge, I guess it really doesn't matter. The 5-up invo just doesn't come into play that often with Void Armor and a 2-up armor save, and then everyone having cover. So it's very rare that you actually get off of a 5-up anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Will's one of the few players who have been around since I started. Used to have his website back in the day, so I'm sure he'll do well with it. And Votann are a bit of a threat at the moment. It'll be interesting to see how we can pin down some of the heavier lists and how those. I'm really keen to see, and I will stop by a few times to see how much he is lamenting those Thunderkin, because they just don't do what they're supposed to do when you need them to. So
yeah, I think it's a very interesting list, and considering that Votann are one of the top 3 or 4 factions, I think they're 4th at the moment by stat check. They're sitting at just a 55% win rate. They did just drop down from 56 recently, so they're doing quite well for themselves. So it'll be really interesting to see how they perform. And then the last list we are going to look at is Lachlan Rigg from WA. And this is the last list, and he is running Chaos Space Marines, and the name of it is Fabius Bill and Ted's Excellent Adelaide Adventure, aka Bill and Ted, which I love that name. That's hilarious. So he is running a 2 undivided Chaos Lords with Demon Hammers, Plasma Pistols, a Dark Commune that's undivided as well, with all the fixings in there, and then Fabius Bile as the Warlord. He's then running a unit of 10 Cultists with a Flamer, Grenade Launcher, and Heavy Stubber in there. Then a unit of 5 Legionaries with a Plasma Pistol, Heavy Melee Weapon, Chaos Icon in there, Las Cannon, and another Heavy Melee Weapon there too. So more focused around combat rather than, running bolters. But still has got the Las Cannon there. 3 Rhinos. All 3 of them are Mark of Nurgle with Combi Bolters, Combi Weapon, and Havoc Launcher. You've then got a unit of 16 Accursed Occultists with the Undivided mark, so 10 Mutants, 6 Torments. Then a unit of, if I'm reading this correctly, 10 Chosen as Chaos Undivided there. It has got 4 Combi Weapons, 2 pairs of Accursed Weapons, 3 Plasma Pistols, a Power Fist, with 6 other Accursed Weapons in there. Chaos Icon, Plasma Pistol, and Power Fist on the Champion. You can then also make that times 2 of the 10-man units, and 1 5-man unit in there as well that has got the Chaos Icon, Plasma Pistol, Power Fist on the Champion, 3 Accursed Weapons with 2 Combi Weapons, a pair of Accursed Weapons, and a Plasma Pistol in there. Then 2 Forge Fiends, one as Mark of Nurgle, one as Undivided with the triple Ectoplasma Cannons, a unit of 2 Obliterators with the Undivided mark, and then the Blue Scribes. Really interesting Chaos list.
Yeah, there's been a lot of debate amongst our gamer group. There's a couple of pick guys on Chaos Space Marines, and there's been a lot of discussion about 3 Rhinos or 2 Rhinos. What's the best number? I think Lockie's landed on the wrong answer here, being 3. I think 2 is the correct answer. And I would have liked to probably see some of the the name eludes me, but the flying dudes with the lightning claws.
Warp Talons.
Warp Talons. Slaneshi Warp Talons are very, very useful tool. So I probably would have liked to see them over maybe the Obliterators and one of the Rhinos, 2 units of those. But Lockie's been on a tear this year. Obviously did really, really well at WCW. It's taken out quite a few events. Got 2nd overall at the OCC here in Australia. So I think that he'll do really well. Chaos have answers to everything. Fabulous Bill certainly adds a bit of an element. And I would say for people going up against this list, be very careful. While on paper, this provides you with 5 opportunities to kill characters because Fabulous Bill does get back up. There's a very good chance that if you take Assassinate, he just parks 2 of those Lords in a Rhino for the entire game and goes, haha, you can't actually get Assassinate. So just be mindful of that when going into it because it is a bit of a trap. And it's a trap that's pretty well known amongst Chaos players that you can bait people into it and then not really need to use them because their units hit hard enough anyway. So
yeah. Jack, do you have any thoughts?
Again, CSM is one I've only played a couple of times, but I really agree. They have so many answers and so many vectors upon which they can attack. Also agree with the Rhino decision purely based on my work with Sisters. It's the same game in Sisters where they tend to want to pick how many Rhinos Immolators they take. 3 is probably pushing it. Obviously, Mark of Nurgle helps, but you can only really hide 1 like that. Again, I just think it has answers. Like the core thing with CSM is that you're going to have to respond to that army. You don't really get to play your game plan. You actually have to engage with their game plan in a way that I think will be very interesting for a couple of factions.
Yep. I don't have a horse in the race of the Rhino discussion. I understand they're good for movement. And likely you're seeing the unit of Legionnaires with the unit of 5 chosen in one and the 2 units of 10 chosen. I'm intrigued that he's got the additional 5 chosen. I think the 2 units of 10 chosen is what I've commonly seen. I do like the inclusion of the Obliterators for that once per game indirect. That is the one thing I do like about the Oblits, so he can deep strike them in a relatively safe spot and then indirect what he needs to, and then get their points back and they're done. Forge Fiends being able to cover flanks, probably going to be exposing the Nurgle one a lot more against anti-tank than the Undivided one, mainly because you can pop the strat for lone op. Blue Scribes, again, lone op, put them on the center objective, and you just be like, cool, I'm getting turn 2 points unless you just secure this guy, or popping in the backfield to just screen out. But yeah, I think it's a really staple CSM list. It's got a lot of the fixings that you'd expect in a CSM list, but it's a few oddities. The Fabius Bile being in there is interesting choice compared to a third Chaos Lord, things like that. I'd be interesting to see how he goes with this list, and we may. I'm not going to predict it just yet. I reckon he will go well. He'll go at least 6-2, if not higher.
Yeah, I think Lockie's probably a good shot to make the top cut at a minimum. I'd say at a minimum 6-2, 7-1 is probably where he'll land. I think Chaos Space Marines having all the answers, him being on a tear and knowing the list really well. He's been on it since early, so he's not one of the late adopters. So I think that he'll find that it plays particularly well to his style, and with the terrain having line of sight blocking on the bottom levels, it really does behoove those fast moving assault units. So I think he'll have quite a good run at it. So
yeah, all right, we're gonna play a little bit of a game, and we're not gonna do player, but we're gonna do faction. Who do we reckon's gonna take out top spot?
CSM, obvious answer.
CSM for Adam. Jack.
I'm torn between two of my comrades on Chadmech. I don't know if it'll be like Brody's Vanguard or Alex's Admech. I'm gonna go with Vanguard. I think he has a plan.
Okay.
Are we talking Brody Middleton or Josh Brody? I always get them confused.
I do as well. I'm going to say Brody Middleton. No offense to Josh Brody. Both of them could take out the podium on a good run. So, but if I had to put money there, I'm just going to say Vanguard in general. I have two excellent picks from New South Wales as to who could take Vanguard to the top spot.
Yeah. I'm going to go a little left field, and I'm going to say Eldari. There's a couple of really strong Eldari players in attendance that I think could go all the way. You're
right. One of them's on the podcast.
I knew you were going to say that, Jack.
Thanks. I mean, I'm in attendance, but I'm not playing. Thanks.
It's okay. What we'll do is we'll swap the Eldar between rounds. So I'll TO rounds like odd rounds, and you TO even rounds.
You can play round 1 and 2, and then I'll play all the good missions. All right.
Sold.
Dale Marn's in attendance, and he was able to do super well at Exterminatus.
Also importantly, Greg Manady's there. Who has been putting up massive results with Eldar as well.
Yep. And then there's yourself as well, Jack. There's a lot of strong players that are on Eldari that are going to be in attendance. And so if players don't have the tech or maybe you haven't played into Eldari as of yet, going into this, you just don't necessarily have it in the meta. If you go up against them, they will do really well. So that's going to be my pick. So CSM, and then Vanguard, and then Eldari. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it all goes. But Adam, before we wrap up, do you have any shout-outs that you'd like to make? Any thanks to those who are helping out, or sponsors and stuff as well?
Yeah, so a major sponsor every year for the event has been Dragon's Lair. So they're a store down south here in Adelaide. Phil's always been great to us. He runs a stall. Last year he didn't have it staffed. This year we said, Phil, if you want to play, you have to have a staff member at that stall, as it didn't work particularly well last year. So the stall at the event will be staffed. That allows you to cash in your vouchers at the end of the event as well. Big shout out to the rest of my team, the Power Stancers, especially with a couple of our TOs being a little bit injured at the moment. They're stepping up in a big way. One of our players actually dropped from the event to help us TO. Big shout out to Dale Sumner out of New South Wales, flying over to assist us. He's going to be one of our barmen and one of the general runners for the event. So really good to have him coming over and helping out for a second year in a row. Really keen to be there and get it on board. So looking forward to getting it out of the way this year. It's been a bit of a crunch, and the next few days being really, really hot over here isn't going to help. But thankfully, the weekend of the event is looking like it'll be pretty pleasant weather, so we won't be dying in a shed with 40-degree weather and rain outside, and just a little tiny piece of terrain in each corner like we would if it was at CanCon. So no shade, definite shade.
Yeah, I'm super looking forward to it. So I want to thank everyone who has joined us in chat for the preview stream of Adelaide Uprising. If you are in attendance, feel free to come and say g'day, or if you are able to lend a hand, I'm sure Adam would appreciate some extra helping hands on the Thursday for setting up. We will be streaming all 8 rounds across all 3 days here on the ATWN, so make sure if you're not in attendance at Uprising, you want to catch the coverage, you drop a follow here on Twitch, and you're able to be notified as to when we start the streams. It's going to be relatively early Australian Central Daylight Savings Time. It's going to be really awesome. I'm super pumped. I've been trying to get out there for the past 3 years, as you know, Adam, and it just this year finally clicked.
Yeah, it's good to have you coming along. Good to get some streaming on board. We had streaming on year 1, but it's been a little bit harder to organise over the last couple of years. So just with like proximity to LVO and things like that. So really good to have you guys coming across.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be an awesome event. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Adam, thank you so much for your time, as well as yourself, Jack. Really appreciate you guys taking the time out to join us to chat about the event, the meta, and preview the stream for everyone who is going to be there, as well as those who aren't. This will be up on our YouTube channel on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So you'll be able to catch that the day before the event if you want to get up to date with all the details as well over on our YouTube channel. But that is going to be it from us for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. We hope to catch you either in person or online for Uprising this weekend. And we hope you have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. And we'll catch you next time.